with a victim mentality is basically a psychological term that refers to the type of dysfunctional mindset which seeks to feel persecuted in order to gain attention or avoid self-responsibility. People who struggle with the victim mentality are convinced that life is not really beyond their control, but it's also out to deliberately hurt them. And let's face it, all of us went through stages in our life where we actually felt like that. And it's actually okay to feel like that, but try to not feel like that forever. So you can actually acknowledge these feelings, deal with it, and let it go. So the faster we let it go, sooner we actually get help. And there is help out there. So with the victim mentality, basically the person with the victim mentality believes that they are in control of their lives and welcome challenges, knowing they can be overcome with hard work or work smartly. Seeing yourself as a victor in life leads to confidence and success. A victim complains that life is unfair, whereas a person with a victor mentality acknowledges life is unfair to everyone. So you're not all alone. We're all in this together and we're all helping each other to survive. I mean, life on this material planet is only temporary and we have to make it worth our while. And, let's try to help each other because all of us are struggling in some sort of way. So our guest for today is an optometrist. Okay, let me just re-say that. He's an optometrist. He's a dad of a beautiful little girl, a bhakti yoga practitioner. He is also a recovered addict and uses as much of his time helping those that are struggling with addiction want to change their life. He cherishes relationships with his loved ones and loves being in the association of like-minded people. He enjoys cooking, reading, studying, spending time in nature, traveling, and most importantly, he loves helping people. So you will notice that I actually said it twice. He loves helping people, and that is so true about him. He's actually more of an empath, and he likes to be there for people. And when you're actually helping somebody else, you forget of your own challenges. So please join me in welcoming our guest for today. His name is Sean, and he's from Pretoria in South Africa. And by saying welcoming, I mean let's join forces in this collaboration and share this live stream across your social platforms, and also invite all of your friends to join in. But the more people we help together, because you never know who is actually needing this help. So faster we help society to heal. So welcome, Sean. We are so grateful that you took this initiative to be here with us, by gracing us with your presence and also giving us or sharing your knowledge with us. We are so grateful that you are here. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Vaishnavi, for having me.
Awesome. So we're gonna just let me give our guests more information on the program. So today we'll be discussing, Sean and I will be discussing on the victim mentality versus the victor mentality. And at the end of our discussion, I will open the floor to you guys to ask any questions to him, or if you have any supporting comments, anything for that matter, you can actually send that to him. But if you have any questions, that will be much more appreciated. And he'll be able to help you because he actually lived the life, he walked the life, and now he's able to teach people how to get out of the victim mentality. And he's also going to be talking through his experiences and tell us more about that. So welcome to Sean once again. So Sean, what values were instilled in you as a child? Can you give us more of a breakdown or a rundown on that?
Yes, so hello everybody, my name is Sean and I'm a recovered addict. The type of values that were instilled in me as a child, so I was raised by very good people. My mother and father, yeah, like I say, they were good people, and they tried their best to raise me in a nice way. And they gave me everything that they could in terms of, on a material level. They put me through school and so on. But yeah, from their side, the values that they tried to instill in me as a child from a young age were always that of integrity. Most importantly is honesty, and being a good person in terms of trying to help others where you can, and sharing that which you have with other people that don't have as much as you. And yeah, so my father in that was also, or is, a religious man, and he taught me about God, and that he taught me how to love God and how um, to implement sort of, or to live life in a way that may please God. So yeah, I could just say that they instilled really good values in me. I can't say that I was able to carry those values out, but I was raised really well. I was raised by very good people, and I'm very grateful to still have them in my life.
Awesome. Yes. So actually, having God in our lives basically helps us when we're in our darkest moments in life. And let's face it, everyone goes through that dark moments, and that's the time you actually need God, your friends, and your family. And if you don't have that support structure, it's very difficult to actually get out of there, because you would know it's actually a very dark area to be in, and you're always trying to get out of it. And so you share some of your challenges that you experienced.
For sure. So something that you just mentioned, yes, that was something that was, you mentioned family values, and the ties of a family, and that was something that was very strong in our family. Family was always extremely important. So some of the challenges that I've experienced. So being an addict, all of the challenges that I've experienced in my life can be drawn back to that one thing, my addiction. Um, so I've gone through challenges in terms of, I've lost jobs, and I'm divorced, and I've lost other relationships in my life, and I've driven people away from me, and I've lost businesses, or a business that I was the owner of. So these are all challenges, but all of these things, falls back on my main challenge, and because this all happened as a direct result of my addiction. So if I was to speak honestly about my challenge that I've experienced, it has been, ever since I was a young person, as far back as I can remember, I remember not actually ever feeling like I fit in. I never quite felt like I could connect to other people. I could never feel like I was on the same playing field as them. And the only way I could really describe that is as I always felt like there was a big hole in my chest, like an empty feeling. And I didn't know how to verbalize it. I didn't know how to describe it to the people that loved me, my friends and my family. I couldn't explain to them this feeling that I had, this feeling of inferiority. And shame, my parents tried everything to try and help me out of it, to take my mind off of it in every way that they can. And so did my friends, the people that loved me. But even so, my very best friend, I always felt, I always still felt like there was a disconnect of sorts. Even though we were so alike. And we grew up similarly, and we did so much together, we spent so much time together. I always felt like there was still something missing from me. So early on in my life, I took a drink. I one day decided to drink some alcohol, and And all of a sudden, that big gaping hole in my chest, that feeling of being disconnected, it suddenly vanished, as if by magic. It was just, and it was like it was like a spiritual awakening for me. It was just the most incredible thing I've ever experienced, because for the first time in my life, I felt like I actually I belonged, like I felt like I was a part of, that I didn't have to feel, different from everybody else. I could actually look the world in the eye. So from an early age, I decided that, after having that first drink, I want to do that a whole lot more, and I want to do it a whole lot more of the time, because it works. So this is basically how I lived my life. From that point onwards, whenever something important came up, when something that was stressful was to happen, I would lean on my crutch, which in the early days was alcohol. Um, and this is not to say, that I drank every single day, when I was a child, or when I was in high school and that. Back then it was more of a binge drinking sessions. But yeah, whenever something stressful or something big was to happen, you could be rest assured that Sean was drinking. And later on in life, so this was my challenge. My challenge was trying to deal with life the way I saw everybody else was so comfortable. Everybody else just got along, and my challenge was just trying to be the same as everybody else. Um, and yeah, so this led me to do other things. Later on in my life, I started using harder drugs, and I won't like list off all the drugs that I've used, but I don't think there's a drug on the street that I haven't used, let's put it that way. And yeah, so in all this time, I was juggling this separate life, this me being a drug user, and trying to, on the other side, be like we discussed earlier, this person that my parents raised me to be. um, and so I was leading a double life the whole time, and it was awful. There's no other way to put it, but it wasn't nice, because on one side, I'm feeling very free and happy because I'm busy using. And on the other side, I'm feeling again like I'm inadequate and I don't fit in. So, I was fortunate enough to go study, as you mentioned earlier. I'm an optometrist by trade. And, I managed to get through my studies by God's grace. I don't know if there's any other that, because I was using so much, and same with the work. I got jobs in that, and God has been good to me. But it's like that was at a time when the drugs were still working. It was still doing something for me. It was actually effective, you could say. And then it reached a point, and it worked for a long time. It worked quite well. And I got married, and we had a daughter. But all of these big events in my life, the using was getting out of hand. And I always thought like one of these big events was going to be the trigger, which was going to make me stop using drugs. And I thought, opening my own business, or the birth of my daughter, or getting married, I thought these big events in my life was going to be enough for me to stop using, to put the drugs down, because it was becoming a problem, just starting to get out of hand. And my behavior was getting worse. And all this time, I had no idea what my problem was. This was my biggest challenge. I didn't understand what this hole in me actually was. And I sought help in all sorts of places. I sought help from psychiatrists and psychologists, and these were very well-meaning people, but they also didn't really understand what it was that was wrong with me. And they gave me all sorts of medications, because I've been diagnosed everything under the sun. I've been diagnosed as bipolar and major depressive, and borderline schizophrenia, and all sorts of these crazy things. And it was actually just, and all sorts of medication came with that. And I misused all of that medication, and I was never completely honest with these well-meaning people. So, and I sought sought an answer in religion. I you know, bounced through so many religions and many self-help books and all sorts of things, you know. But it was because I never understood what my problem was. I thought my problem was drugs and alcohol. But the problem was that every time I put the drugs and the alcohol down, my life got progressively worse. You know, it didn't get better. You know, my insides, my feeling inside, it just got worse and worse. And then until I reached a point where I reached for the one thing I knew would take that feeling away, and you know, that was the bottle or the pipe or something like that. You know, yeah. Thanks. I think
So,
that answers that question.
yeah. So, what would you say was a turning point in your life? When did you think something in you actually changed for you to actually leave that way of life? Because now you're a totally new person. It's like you're born again.
Yes.
So, what was the turning point?
So the turning point for me was when I reached a point. It was so, like I mentioned previously, all of these things happened in my life, and they weren't enough to stop me. So the actual turning point was when I was completely emotionally, spiritually, mentally, physically bankrupt. I reached a point where you know, I felt I could not go on living with the drugs and the alcohol, and I could not go on living without the drugs and the alcohol. And I'd been to rehab before this point, you know, and I wasn't ready for it. I hadn't reached that rock bottom yet, you know. And that was my rock bottom, was when I reached that point where I couldn't live with it and I couldn't live without it, you know. And so my only choice was left was to find a whole new way to live. And I'd met somebody, my sponsor today, who was a recovered addict and an alcoholic, and he had something that I wanted. You know, he was living a useful life. He wasn't using, and you know, and he told me that he had a way for me to stop and to stay stopped. You know, because my problem wasn't, you know, I was able to stop using by going to rehab or locking myself up for a while or whatever the case was. But staying stopped was the problem. Like I said, every time I stopped, my insides, my life got progressively worse, you know. So yeah, that turning point when I then finally reached out for help, and I asked him like to please help me to do this. And I went to rehab for the last time. And when I'd gotten out of rehab that last time, you know, my family didn't want anything to do with me. The only thing that I had left was the guidance from my sponsor, and I got in touch with a fellowship. This fellowship's name is Cocaine Anonymous, and in CA they actually told me what my problem was. You know, they explained to me that I have a disease called addiction, and it's not because I always thought it was a moral failing. I thought I was a bad person for using drugs and alcohol, but they explained to me that no, I wasn't a bad person. I was a sick person. And that was a big thing for me. They explained to me what my disease, you know, consists of, you know, that I've got a body that when I put a mind-altering substance in my body, something happens in my body that stops me that I can't stop using on my own willpower. I have to continue using until something outside of me stops me. And I've got a mind that obsesses about using, you know, I've got a mind that tells me that this time when I use, it's going to be somehow different. I'm going to be able to use like a normal person, you know. In other words, I'll be able to drink like a gentleman. But that, you know, every single experience before that has shown me that I can't. But my mind is insane in that way that I convince myself that I can, you know, and that this time I'm going to be able to control and enjoy my using. But the third part of this disease, which they taught me about, was that it all stems from a spiritual malady. That hole that in my chest that I've been feeling all this time, it stems from a disconnect from a power greater than myself. And they explained to me that in order for me to get in touch with this power greater than myself, which will keep me clean and sober and which will solve all my other problems, I need to do these 12 steps, the 12 steps of CA. And it was through doing these 12 steps that I managed to get rid of all the things in me that was blocking me from the power greater than myself, which I I call God. And yeah, and it's gotten me into a conscious contact with my Creator. And so yes, where I sit now, as you mentioned earlier, helping others, that's a big part of my program. The 12th step asks us to go carry this message to other addicts and alcoholics. And that's part of the reason why I'm speaking to you as well tonight, why I accepted your invitation, because I thought maybe this was a good opportunity for me to maybe educate people who don't know about addiction, that it is a disease, that it's not a moral failing, that people who are using drugs and alcohol are doing that because they are powerless over it. And it's not because the things that they, when somebody, and it's a difficult disease, because when somebody has a disease like cancer, everybody is sorry for him. But when somebody has the disease of addiction, because with it comes, that it ruins all the good things in a person's life, and it creates fierce resentment in the family members and their loved ones. And it creates, financial insecurity and all sorts of awful things that, people, it's a very difficult thing for people to wrap their heads around, that actually the person that's doing all of these bad things, that is not a bad person, is actually a sick person. But yeah, I'm so grateful that I got in touch with this fellowship of CA that taught me what my problem was and gave me a solution to my problem, that I can live a happy and a useful life now.
Do you want to tell us more about the 12 steps for those of us that don't know? I mean, it sounds very interesting, very intrigued. I'm very intrigued by it.
Super. So the 12 steps, our first step says that we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction and that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2 is that we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Step 3 is that we hand our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God. So the first 3 steps is basically, I admit that I'm powerless, and it's telling me, okay, well, maybe there is a power, I'm powerless, and it's telling me that there is a power. And then the third step is saying, well, now you make a decision. Do you either want to be powerless or do you want to have power, And if you make this decision, then you can go into the fourth step, which is we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. Then the fifth step is to admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. So in our fifth step, we get honest about everything that we did in the fourth step, I tell another person all of my resentments, my fears, my my sexual conduct, all of these things, that I spill the beans with somebody else and with God, and in that way I clear what's been blocking me from this power greater than me. In steps 6 and 7, I ask God to remove my shortcomings. Steps 8 and 9, I go out and I make a list of all the people I harmed in my active addiction, and then I go out and I make amends to those people, except when to do so would injure them or others. And then steps 10 and 11 asks me to continue to take personal inventory. So, and when I'm wrong, to promptly admit it, and through prayer and meditation, to improve my conscious contact with God as I understand God. And then the 12th step asks me to, the 12th step says, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps, we try to carry this message to addicts and to practice these principles in all our affairs. So the 12th step, it's beautiful. It's a promise, it's promising that if I do these steps, I will have a spiritual awakening, which will solve my problems.
Absolutely beautiful. I'm really blown away by it. It's actually telling me that you become more aware of who you are, your real identity, your real self. You actually, through the steps, you actually reconnected, realigned with real you. And I'm so grateful that you actually are sharing all of this knowledge with us. I mean, if all of us never got this opportunity through this talk, we would not have learned something new today. So what would you say, what are the signs of victim mentality according to you? Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing, and this is from my experience now, it's thinking that one is alone, that I'm somehow alone in this, and that I'm different, and that my situation is unique. Um, and I mean that, you know, if I look at the disease of addiction, you know, not only the person who's addicted is a victim, but the family members are as well, you know. And often this whole thing is kind of seen as a taboo subject, and that people try to sweep it under the rug and not really. And that's the thing. You know, the stats have shown that there's 10% of the population that are addicts or alcoholics. You know, so 10% is quite a large number of the population. So it's out there, you know, it's not just like a tiny portion of people that have this problem, you know, it's a lot of people. So yeah, you know, for the longest time, I thought that I was special and different and that there's nobody that could possibly help me, you know, and that's, I think, kept me in that disease, you know, that kept me sick for so long, because I was convinced that there's nobody that can help me, and that, you know, I'm too far gone, you know. Um, and I think that's also, I see it a lot in other people and their families. You know, family members feel the same way. You know, they feel that what they're going through is unique, and that there's nobody else that's got this problem, and it's only us. And you know, there's so much shame on us and so on, and that keeps us in that, you know, that mentality of being a victim. You know, when actually there's so much help out there. And there's so many people who suffer from the same problem that I do, you know, and that can help me to, and that have a solution for this problem. So yeah, I would say maybe that's the main thing that I could say puts one in a victim mentality.
So do you, with your group, your support group, I know they actually offer support for the person that actually going through this. They also offer support for the families involved in this as well.
That is a really good question, and yes, so in CA, in Cocaine Anonymous, we have open and closed meetings. So, but most of our meetings are open meetings. An open meeting means that a family member is welcome to come with and see what we're all about. So that's for them to get to be introduced to what the program is and what we as addicts do. But then the family members of the addict also have their own fellowship. The fellowship is known as Co-Anon. And that is literally a fellowship which is only for the family members of the addict, you know, or people that have been touched by the addict. Because addiction, they say it's a family disease. And because, you know, the addict actually makes the family members sick as well. You know, they also become very resentful, and they go through so much trying to help this person. You know, like if I think of my family, you know, they very nearly killed themselves trying to help me, you know. So, you know, when coming out the other side, they also left with a lot of pain and suffering and hurt, you know, that they need help with. And yeah, so there's an entire fellowship which is only for the family members, called Co-Anon.
Wow, very, very insightful. I'm really blown away. I'm saying this again because there are so many people in our society that's going through things like this, and they are so afraid to reveal what they're going through because of shame of what people may think of them. And for you to come on this platform to share all of your knowledge and help with all of our audience, and I'm hoping that they're also sharing it with their friends. Um, I really take my hat off to you if I was wearing one. So yeah, thank you so much for that. And I see we have a lot of people online already asking questions. But before we go on to that, I'll ask our audience to keep on asking those questions. I'm nearly done with our discussion with Sean. I will ask him one more question. Sorry, I'll go on to our live stream comment section. So how does one break mentality or the from the victim mentality? Is there a way to actually break from it?
So if I go back to the previous question, you know, you know, if I continue to live in this belief that I'm alone and that nobody can help me, then I'm going to continue to stay sick. So for me to break that victim mentality would mean I need to reach out to people and start telling them that, listen, I'm struggling, that I'm not doing okay, that I have a problem and I don't know how to handle it. I don't know what to do about it. And in that way, if I start to, like you mentioned in the when you were introducing me, I like to surround myself with like-minded people. So this helps me because if, like in our meetings, I'm surrounded by people who are in the same boat as I am, and in that way I can see, what, like, for example, if somebody comes into our meeting and he shares, wow, he had an awful day, he got fired, and his dog died, and this happened and that happened, but he's sitting in the meet, but I'm clean and sober today, and God helped me through it, and I did it like this, and this is what I did. Then I start to see, wow, look at what this person did. He's sitting here, he's telling me about his problems, but he's telling me not only how his problems, but he's telling me how he got through them. Then I start to see, but wow, it is possible. Um, and in that way, I start to, and for me personally, the way that I'm not powerless today is because I rely on God. My power comes from a power greater than myself. It doesn't originate in me. And so for me, every morning, to pray and hand my life over to the Lord and say, listen, please help me with today. Guide my steps, show me what it is that you want me to do. And then God does all sorts of funny things. I mean, here I'm sitting, chatting to, having an interview online. I mean, this is not something I would have thought that me, Sean, would be doing. But God does, he puts these things on my path now. And it's with his help that I get to actually sit here and do it with a bit of confidence and a bit of grace and a bit of dignity.
Wow. Yeah, you're really brave to actually come on this platform to share all of this with us. And it just tells me you're very selfless to actually do something like this because you're actually thinking about the others who you're going to be helping. And I'm sure there's loads of people going to be taking some sort of inspiration from this, and they are going to be seeking more help. So just brace yourself. I'm sure you will be getting a lot of messages. I know we're not sharing your social links on this platform. So if I'll ask you this at the end of this, if they need to actually get in contact with you, you can actually give them advice on that. But coming back to our discussion, when we speak about addiction, and I know there's many other sorts of addictions like clothing, shopping for clothing, or even taking comfort from food, or anything like that. I mean, we can get addicted to things like that as well. So does your group give support to other addicts in other addictions, or is it only strictly for alcohol and drug addiction?
Okay, so that's another really good question because, if I was never exposed to any alcohol or drugs growing up, my addiction would have manifested in another way. I would have become, like you just mentioned, I would have become an overeater or a hoarder or a sex addict or something like this. It would have definitely, or a gambling addict. So our fellowship is specifically more for cocaine and all other mind-altering substances like drugs and alcohol. But we actually don't mind. If you have any addiction, you're welcome to join us because the steps, the solution is the same. And there are actually other fellowships which deal specific where you'll find people who have a very similar problem. Like if you're a gambling addict or an overeater, there are Overeaters Anonymous. There is also Gamblers Anonymous. But if those sorts of meetings aren't in your area or that fellowship isn't in your area, please join us because, like I say, addiction, it may the symptoms may look a little bit different on the outside. It may have come out in a different way, but the solution is the same. So I hope that answers the question.
Oh, it does perfectly. So we come to the end of our discussion. It was so insightful, and I wish we can actually talk more about this. And I'm sure we will invite you again to in the near future, because we come to the end, nearly the end of the year as well. So we want to do more of these type of talks, because, like you mentioned, a lot of us take these very important discussions or topics and we brush it under the carpet. But these things are affecting society, and as the years are going by, it's actually affecting more strongly than it did before. Or maybe it did before as well, but not many of us actually acknowledged it. But now we're actually taking these platforms to share these, if there is solutions to all of our problems, and getting people that actually walked that type of life to come on these platforms to share anything that actually helps, any tools or insights, would be very beneficial to everyone. So thank you for that. So I'm just going to recap our discussion. I try to take down notes like I always do. Um, so okay, you also you when we started, you basically said the values that were instilled in you as a child were integrity, honesty, helping others where you can, and your dad also taught you about God, loving God, and finding that strength from God. When you actually put God at the center of everything that you do, everything else actually becomes easier. You will go through challenges. Let's face it, this material world is full of challenges, and every step that we take, when we do put God in the center, it makes everything much more easier to go through. And you mentioned some of the challenges that you experienced were, it all boiled down to addiction. You lost jobs, you lost relationships, you lost your business, you never fit in social circles, and you tried to deal with life. So yeah, it's actually a lot of people go through things like this, whether they're actually dealing with addiction or some other sort of challenge. But a lot of people are trying to fit in and they don't know how to actually do it. But when you actually your real self, or you, like you actually mentioned in the 12 steps, are you realigned with your real self, you actually you found peace within that. And the third question I actually asked you about, what was the turning point in your life? And you mentioned about physically. I actually like this that you mentioned. You felt bankrupt physically, spiritually, emotionally, and when you hit rock bottom, you couldn't live without it, without the drugs, and you also couldn't live with it. You knew it was time to make a change, and I'm glad that you did. So you reached for help, and thankfully you found the help. So yes, like you also said, God is always there. He's always waiting for us to ask for help, and you did, and that's how He sent you your guardian angel to help you through that. You also mentioned when you always thought that you were alone, that when you actually were in the victim mentality, and when you thought you were all alone, you never realized that your family were also going through this, and this disease affected the entire family. You also mentioned about when you reach out to people, when you're actually becoming more of the victim mentality, you're reaching out to people, you're being honest, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, prayer, and taking guidance from God, like we were discussing throughout our conversation, putting God in the center. So yeah, we're actually so grateful that you walk that path, and there is a reason why we have to go through these challenges. These challenges actually teach us our strength, and when you're actually in a much more different mind frame, and you are able to share your insights and your knowledge with us. Just give me a second, I want to charge my that's right. Okay, now I'm going to go onto our live stream comment section just to check out any questions we have. Do you have anything else to share whilst I actually go on our comment section?
So maybe I can tell you a little bit about how this fellowship of CA works.
Yes, thank you.
Just for, yeah, so the way that we work is we've got meetings that we have, and the meetings are completely anonymous. You know, you can just, it's in the name, Cocaine Anonymous, and if you feel that you have a problem, you can find the meetings on our websites, and the fellowship is quite big in Johannesburg, and it's spread out now to Pretoria and Cape Town and Durban and Limpopo. And yeah, so in Pretoria, we meet 3 times a week. In Johannesburg, there's a meeting every day of the week. And due to this whole COVID stuff, we even have online meetings now on Zoom meetings, you know,
Awesome.
where you can come and hear about the program and meet some people that can help you with your issue, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. At the end of our talk, would you be able to go on to our comment section and just type out the contact details for this group? So whoever is watching
Yes,
and they need this help, so they can actually go reach out to them. Okay.
absolutely, absolutely, no problems.
I'm going to go on now and I'll read a few of questions and comments. I see you have a lot of supporters. And yeah, like I always say, it's very good to have a nice, strong support structure. So whatever we are going through, it makes it much more easier because life on this material planet is always full of challenges. So we have Pixoli. She says, I'm so proud of you, Sean. You've come so far. The person I know today is a flip side of the person you were describing. You are really disciplined and strong, and that inspires me. So you are also an inspiration.
Thank you.
So Bhakti Rasa says, thank you, Sean, for sharing this and being so bold and brave. And I do agree. You are very bold and brave to do something like this. But like I said, you're very selfless, and that is why you're doing this. You're going to be helping so many more people. And I'm sure you're already doing that. You're just doing more right now. I think you're going the extra mile, I would say. So Jay Radhika says, thank you for sharing your story so honestly, explaining the role that the Lord plays in overcoming addiction. She says, very inspiring indeed. So Bhakti Rasa has a question for you. She asks, to what extent can people become addicted to medication? I know someone who I believe is addicted. I believe they are not aware because it has become a way of life. How do I approach such a situation and confront them?
Okay, that's a wonderful question. So there's, you know, in terms of addiction, you've got to, especially to medication, you know, there's a difference between like being an addict, the way that I'm an addict, versus being dependent on something. So, you know, because there's a physical, like some medications are physically addicting, you know, especially some painkillers. And you know, like the best example that one can find in our history books is the Vietnam War. The amount of soldiers that went to war there and used opiates or heroin, was incredible to get through that awful time. But when they came back and detoxed, only 10% of those soldiers continued using.
Mm-hmm.
So when the rest of them, the other 90%, weren't addicts. You see, they were just hooked to the heroin. But when the heroin was taken away from them and they were back to family life and everything was okay, then they carried on with their lives as per normal. So that would be the thing, you know, is this person just dependent on the medication, or are they actually an addict, you know? So I think the best way to approach somebody like that would be obviously with an attitude of love and compassion, coming from a place of, listen, I'm concerned about you, and I love you, and I feel like perhaps that, you know, you're overdoing it with this medication and it may be affecting your health. And if the person, you know, snaps back at you and says like, you know, oh, I don't have a problem, just leave me alone, you know, then it would be best to just do exactly that, you know, to just leave them for, you know, to continue to press them is going to push them away. But I think it's best to just let them know that, listen, if you feel you do have a problem, I'm here to help. And offer a way, tell them that if you do believe you have a problem, I know of somebody, I know of a group of people that can help. You know, they've overcome their addiction, and if you'd like, I can point you in their direction. You know, like, don't try and save the person, because they're going to often get defensive and try and push you away. Just explain to them that, listen, I'm concerned and I love you, and if you feel you've got a problem, I know of some people that you don't have to speak to me. Go speak to these random people. They're completely anonymous, and see, maybe they can help you decide whether you do have a problem or not, you know.
Yeah.
And if it is a medication that they're addicted to, also they'll have to wean themselves off of that under the guidance of a doctor, you know, a medical professional.
Yeah. I agree with you. With anything in life, something so sensitive like this, love is the only thing that can overcome anything. So yeah. So we have another question here. What role does courage play in your life every day as a recovered addict? It's also from Bhakti Rasa.
So, courage. So in CA, we've got a little motto. I don't know if you can see it on the logo here. It says hope, faith, and courage.
Okay.
So I mean, the most courage that I ever had to pluck up was for me to pluck up the courage to go and ask for help, you know. That courage initially, you know, it took a lot of courage, because I was relying on me, you know, and I was scared witless, you know. But that courage transformed into some hope, and then from that hope, faith grew. And now it's much easier for me because I've got a faith in a power. I know that I can rely on this power. I can rely 100% on God, you know, to get me through the day. I don't have to try and do it myself, you know. So you know, that to me, I feel like I don't have to. It may sound strange, but I don't have to have that much courage now, you know. Like, it's transformed more into just a solid faith, you know. And whenever I feel fear creeping in, I pray about it, you know, and I ask God to remove that fear, you know, and show me, direct me how He wants me to be. And then when I'm living in God's will, then life doesn't scare me so much, you know. Yeah, I hope that answers the question.
It does, and it's very inspiring as well. So thank you so much for it. It just tells me that everything that you do, everything that you say, the way of your life right now is actually revolving around God, and that's the best. When you actually have that pillar of strength, it gives you that strength, and that is why you're overcoming all of these different challenges that you're faced with and faced in the past. So we have a question.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you have a question from Chiksoli. She says, or she asks, what advice would you give to a recovered addict that is still seeking a high or the adrenaline rush that drugs offer?
My suggestion to that person would be to do the 12 steps, because only once I've done the steps you see, I call myself a recovered addict because today I have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body.
Okay.
I'm not cured of addiction. If I pick up a drink today or any mind-altering substance, I'm in big trouble again because I've just set it all off again, you know. I can't drink in moderation, for example, you know.
Yeah.
And the same goes for any other thrill-seeking behavior like that, you know. In my early recovery, I was also doing all sorts of wild things because I was trying to, you know, get that feeling again, you know. But only by doing the 12 steps and by removing these obstacles that was blocking me from my power greater than me, only by doing that am I now feeling, you know, only now do I start to comprehend the word serenity, you know, and know peace, you know. And that comes from a conscious contact with my creator. And the only way that I got that conscious contact is by doing the 12 steps. So for me as an addict, luckily, I don't have to do anything complicated or esoteric. I just do those simple steps, and it's my, you know, surefire way for me to get in contact with a power greater than me.
Yeah, I do agree. Would you be able to send me those 12 steps? I'll actually just post it on my Facebook page, and I'll actually share it across all of my social platforms. It's actually very good to share these type of knowledge with people that you never know. As you said, any type of addiction that a person that may be going through, these 12 steps, I'm sure it's actually general for all of the addictions. It can actually
Yes.
help to recover, and that'll be nice. So I'm just going to be reading a few more of the comments and questions. This is from okay. This is from Nicole. She says, "So proud of you. I love you so much." I think this is your sister, because she calls you a butti, and I'm sure that is brother. You're such an
Yes.
inspiration. Okay. And Saloshni says, "Interesting info. You are bold and brave." So Erica says, "We are so proud of you, Sean. We have our son back." I think this is your mom.
Yeah.
So I'm getting to know the family as well. I'm so grateful that all of you have joined and to give Sean your support. Um, okay, you got two more from Saloshni and Bhakti. Saloshni says, "Great that you're no longer a slave to fear," and I so agree. Fear is one thing that can actually hold you back to achieve the greatest, and you are achieving so much now that, like your mom says, she has a son back, and we have you back onto this into this world, because when you're actually in a different world taking drugs, I'm sure you're actually not in this world anymore. You're somewhere else. So yeah.
Absolutely.
There's one more from Bhakti. She says, "That was beautiful, living in God's world. Thank you for continuing to inspire us." And this was such an inspirational talk. And each time I actually meet with people on this platform and I speak to them, I get inspired every time, and always say, "This was my best talk. This was my best talk." In fact, all of my talks are one of my best. And I'm so grateful to all of you come here to be so brave and so bold and so courageous, like your emblem actually says, to share all of these insights and all of this knowledge with us. We take things for granted, but when you're actually living that life, walking that path, then you realize, you know, I actually overcome so much now that you're actually sober, so to say. We actually come to the end of our talk, sadly. So our viewers were very, very kind and very, very, I would say they actually were very, what is the word I'm looking for? Sean, maybe you can help me here. They actually,
Yeah.
yeah, because I
Insightful.
mean, I can't find the words for them. I mean,
Yeah.
as I was saying, each time I'm doing this, my audience is actually surprising me even more, because taking that courage to come on here and be here, be present and ask these questions. Some people are very shy and they shy away from asking these type of questions, but being here supporting you and asking all of these questions. So I'm also very grateful to you, and I'm sure Sean can also agree with me.
Absolutely. Yes. The audience has been very sweet.
Yeah. So do you have any tools to share with us? Anything that actually inspired you during your journey?
Um, so yeah, I think the most important thing, and it's like I've just said it before, and this is it's like you've just stated now, um, the central fact of my life today is that, that there's this God that's my creator, and he's entered into my life in a way which is indeed miraculous. And I think too often we put um, a cap on what God can do. We forget that he's infinite. And, I think we need to, as I've said, yeah, as we've mentioned, that, that fear can hold us back. Ask God to remove that fear and to really walk hand in hand with him, because he can take us to such great heights. We can achieve things that we thought, were impossible to us. And yeah, I think that would be my parting words.
Okay, awesome. So I see we have one more comment saying that the 12 steps that you're going to be sharing will be absolutely great, and I do agree. So I'm looking forward to that. So I see that you also shared your parting thoughts. Do you have anything else to leave them with, or you're okay with just that?
trust God, clean house, and help others.
I love that. So thank you so much for joining us. We are so grateful that you took this platform, share all of that with us. I mean, you shared so much of knowledge with us. We are very inspired, and as you can see, our audience also are very inspired. And we wish you all the best in helping the rest. There's so many more that you're going to be helping. And to our audience, thank you so much for partaking and being so courageous and supporting Sean through everything. I mean, some of you are actually friends with him, some of you are family with him, and some of you are actually new acquaintances as well. So thank you so much. And some of you actually don't know him as yet, but you actually got to know him through this talk. I also got to know him through this, and I'm actually very grateful to him. And again, I'm grateful to you guys. So please continue supporting us and sharing our live streams across your social platforms. Also inviting all of your friends to partake and join our page on various other platforms as well. You also will find us on LinkedIn, because we're also doing corporate stuff as well. You'll find us on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. So subscribe to our channel. And if you're actually watching the live stream now, you can also subscribe to that. There's actually a bell button on the top. That's what I've been told. You can actually click on that. So whenever we go live, you'll actually get notified about it. So again, thank you so much. Thank you, Sean, and we'll keep in touch.
Thanks again for having me, Vaishnavi.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.